All right, so we should be live. Uh, Let me guys know if you can hear me and how the sound is. um, I have not. I've never tried or haven't. I don't. I may have done it like once or twice a long time ago. I think maybe one stream we tried this 4 or 5 years ago, like reacting to other videos and content, and I thought that would be a fun thing to do tonight. So you guys are gonna have to let me know how the sound is. And when we start like playing the videos that we're gonna watch and then talk about and react to, um, you'll let me know if you can hear it, and can you hear them? Can you hear me? etc. etc. Definitely not using the best setup in the world, so hopefully it goes smoothly enough. But yeah, how's it going, FOMO? How's it going, Pelivakis, Leaf Green Goblin? Hope everyone is doing well tonight. So I truly have not watched or barely watched, I would say, any Pokemon content, um, investing content. I think I've watched some, um, like an occasional, I don't know what they're referred to, but like drama-ish type content, or content that's more active about, rather than making like an argument about like something to do with the argument, the market, more about uh not liking one influencer, another influencer not liking it, another influencer, those types of things. So I really don't know. I assume there's like a plenty of new content creators, tons of new content creators that I've never seen, that I've never watched, and a number of which, like, be nice to reach out to and get to know and start having conversations with. And so I thought it would be fun to just watch listen together to what people are saying out there. Um, and it can be an education. If I'm gonna make more content and more videos, I should know what people are talking about, what people enjoy talking about, what people are listening to, et cetera, et cetera. So, are there any so for people jumping in, as a few people are coming in now, anyone you guys really want me to listen to? I was planning on just like sharing my screen here on StreamYard and typing in. I pre-typed in Pokemon Investing 2026 and just kind of see what comes up. Oh, hey, Pokemon Classics, I am. Thank you. I hope you're doing well too. I'm actually wearing this shirt that Sarah got for me that says "Dad" because that's my big recent. It's a little Dragonite shirt with my favorite Pokemon, and that's my big recent news. I am now officially a father, which has been amazing and exhausting, and I'm sure, as many of you know, an incredible experience. But I hope you have been well. I hope you've been well also, man. Probably not going to be traveling to too many shows this year, but hopefully our paths will cross at some point and we can catch up in person. But yeah. So let me know who you guys. This is not like a hate watching stream or anything like that. We're just gonna watch and have genuine conversations, reactions. I'm interested to hear what people think. I obviously will stop it and kind of share my response. And again, it's the first time I'm doing this, so we'll just feel it out. The Arcade says, I think Rudy would be an obvious choice. Team Rocket Joey for Rage Bait. Next Gen TCG podcast has some good takes. Nostalgianomics is always good for investing content. Can definitely Nostalgia Mimics. We can listen to some Alex if people would like that. No, let's hate watch. Hello, says, well, that might be the reaction at different times, but my hope is this is like certainly entertaining, but also like educational. It can be a way to kind of debate and flesh out topics. It can also be a way to like introduce people to different channels, introduce, start conversations. So, I think, yeah, no worries. Yeah. I think it should be good. So you guys want to start with anyone specifically? You want to start with one of those, or should we just kind of jump into the random ones to start? Let's just jump in. I don't mean random as in to be rude. I just mean the ones that happen to come up. Sure, that's no problem, Arcade. Okay, so here's, hopefully you guys can see it now. Why don't we just test out the sound and see if it works? So here's the first video by a guy named Steel City Stacks that came up when I typed in Pokemon Investing 2026. So congrats to him for the algorithm hit to be at the top. So this is a person I do not know. I've never seen any of his videos. So I can see a picture saying too cheap to fail. So I imagine it's going to be a video about how these products are inexpensive and that they're probably going to go up in value. So let's give it a try. We'll test the volume. We'll see how it all goes.
All right, guys, I have the perfect palette cleanser for you today. We're going to be talking about the lowest risk, highest upside sealed items and a few other cards that you guys can really get yourselves into for the rest of 2026. I think these are going to be pretty safe items. With everything still going up in price right now, there are still some opportunities, and we're going to highlight them in this video. We talked about a very heavy topic in the last video, so I thought this would be perfect. My name is Steve. This is Steel City Stacks. Thank you guys for joining me and watching this video today. We're also going to open up another booster bundle of Chaos Rising here, see if we can pull something here. You know, we have been getting skunked doing this live, so I don't know. I'll keep doing it if you guys want to. But you know, just again, more of like the human element here. And once again, these weekend videos, very relaxed style, just, you know, just kind of kicking back.
Can you guys hear the video? Because I'm actively playing the video. Can you guys hear it? Just let me know if you can. Because if you can't, that'll be an issue, and I'll have to try and fix it.
Doing things here because again, we did talk about a very heavy topic on the last one. Hopefully,
is it loud enough?
I'm recording this ahead of time here because I have something I need to do Friday night, but hopefully it did okay. You guys weren't gonna try and kill me for that one. It was just a very serious but heavy topic, and I think it's relatively important. But let's kind of rant here a little bit while we open these packs here, because I'd rather talk and do this or to rip packs than just sit here and stare at a screen, you know, kind of talk to you guys.
But I'm gonna skip to the
guys. I legitimately thought I was gonna crash out there for a second. Guys, I one. These are extremely low risk. I really do think so. I want to preface this with, you know, make sure you guys hold these for longer than a year, or 2 or 3, probably. Not only are we going to remember Phantasmal Flames as like, you know, one of the most god tier sets that can pull like something from the main set, Mega Evolution is going to go down as one of the best base main sets of all time. And then the whole series 1 with the Charizard and stuff like that. We're going to get to them, but literally anything that has the little thing on it, anything with a little thing on it, the 30th stamp is going to do pretty well. So this is definitely on the list here. Go shop around for some good stuff. You know, these are all probably going to get wiped out from the TCG player sale. I'm assuming. Mixed reaction to that, by the way. I'm not a super big fan of the TCG player sale. I was just making a video, but anyway, about $63 for this right now, roughly, a little bit less than that. I think it's going to be pretty solid. I understand there's only like, you know, going to be like 3 packs in it. What's the ceiling on this, you might be asking? I think honestly, like this thing as like a collector's item, I could see this getting upwards of like, I don't know, maybe like $100, because like you look at like most of the celebration stuff now and it's like going absolutely berserk. So I think 35th anniversary, a lot of nostalgia is going to come back for this. I could really see this being a pretty heavy item if you're willing to actually hold it for that long. I feel like most people aren't, but one of the ones that I would recommend for longer, but again, low risk.
So, you know, I think you guys probably know my opinions on modern, you know, ultra modern product. I think that, you know, what do I want to say? You know, I think that we all hope, I think, or most of us hope that what this guy says happens, because it will mean that the Pokemon market continues to grow. And certainly this box, you know, if this box is 200 plus in a few years, it's likely that we've had sort of a continuation of the last few years. Now, will that happen? Will the Pokemon market continue to grow? Will there continue to be this much heat? Nobody knows. I don't know if that's something that people say on YouTube or how that sells to people nowadays. I see Pokemon Classic saying that he thinks those boxes will be 200. So like the reason we think that, or the reason we suspect that, is really the logic he's talking about here in the video, which is that, well, Celebrations, when Celebrations came out, initially Celebrations actually was like, I think sort of right out of the gate it boomed, and the prices of the singles were like wild and crazy, but pretty and you can actually open the product and make money by selling the raw cards for like a few weeks. But the history probably most people remember from people who were in at that time was that it was sort of like a lukewarm reception, I would say. I think with those for the people who were already here, I think when you have reprints of cards, the people who are already here oft seem to have somewhat of a lukewarm response. I think there was a lukewarm response to like, okay, they're reprinting the base of Charizard again. We've already had that reprint in Evolutions, but it's kind of a fun set. They showed homage to a number of playable cards throughout the eras, which isn't always the most interesting thing to collectors, but they also paid homage to a number of some playable cards were really also very, very collectible. I'll put classics, and if you guys want to share your arguments and ideas, like, I'm happy to share them on the screen. So Classic says, my logic is the Kanto stars will always have appeal, and the fact that a vintage collector like me likes them means it has a much wider audience than most modern products. Yeah, so I think that, sure, I think that similar to Celebrations, products that have Kanto starters or Kanto evolutions or Kanto popular tier 1 Pokemon, I do think out of the modern stuff will tend to have the biggest fan base today, and probably over the next few years relative to other things. I think the $200 plus part of this, to me, has way more to do with where Pokemon will be. I think if Pokemon continues what it's doing and continues its popularity, and we see the continued prices out of the gates on modern, then this going to $200 in a few years is perfectly fine. I think it's a gamble whether or not that's going to happen. I think I said on my last video that I don't think anyone who's investing in this, and this is going to sound I don't mean this in a condescending way. This is not serious investing, because they don't know how many of these cards are being printed. They don't know if there's going to be reprints. They don't know where the Pokemon market is going to be in a few years. And they don't know when to buy it. Should they buy it now? Should they wait a few months? And they don't know how long to hold it. And there really isn't anything anyone is going off of outside of what's happened in the past. But there isn't really a logic necessarily to what's happened in the past. It just sort of is what it is. So it's like we boomed hugely, and now people look back on that and say, well, that was obvious in hindsight. And so whatever was popular before is likely going to be popular again and continue to be popular. Now, to the Kanto starters point, I think that makes sense. I think that the earlier generations are going to have likely the most Pokemon fans of those Pokemon, at least for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. When you start getting in longer time horizons, who knows what the kids, today, if they are collecting and spending a lot of money on these items, who knows what they're going to like and which Pokemon are going to be their favorites. But, I think when we tell people to, buy a bunch of these, they'll definitely be up in 2 years. It's the same mistake that people are consistently making. The level of confidence, and I don't know about this gentleman, like I don't know how confident he is in this. Again, I think if you have lots and lots of money invested in collectibles and stocks and everything else, and you put 10, 15, $20,000 into this, hoping to flip it in 3 to 4 years. Do I think that's foolish? No, not necessarily. I think it's sort of speculation, a gamble of sorts. And I think Pokemon, could stay the path. Now, what I would do with the money, I would, instead of putting 10, 15,000 into something like this, I would buy a trophy card. I would buy an undervalued item that is going to be, that its historical importance and its rarity today are dramatically undervalued relative to other things. And we've seen that, frankly, come to fruition even during this last boom, that the things that have moved up the most have been the rarest, the most historical, the most desirable items. In 20 to 40 years, if it really continues like this, or any even close to this, that logic is just going to become more powerful over time. And it's not rocket science. It's simply just value investing. And your value assessment is, S&P Pratt, older, rarer, minter, better. Although I would replace some of those words. I would say, because older, not necessarily, but rarer, absolutely, historically important or relevant to people. And I do think modern cards could be very important and relevant, particularly if they're rare. So there are modern releases. There can be modern releases, and I think we'll also watch some investing videos that I made in the past, and we can go back on those. But this is the popular thing to do, which is to buy what is extremely popular, what is mass produced, and then hope it goes up 2 to 3 years later. And it's been working for basically everything, over the past 5 to 6 years. And will it work for another 5 to 6 years? It's sort of anyone's guess. So I think that's what this video is going to be. As always, like, I appreciate anyone who's sharing their opinions out there. I think I think when people watch videos like this, it makes them feel good about what they're buying. It makes them feel good about what they're holding. It makes them feel more certain. Okay, other people are doing it too. I think that can be good because it can push people over the fear. And I do think, like, taking a gamble, taking a risk, like buying some of this product is, like, perfectly reasonable. I just wouldn't want anyone who, isn't diversified in a lot of different Pokemon stuff and diversified across a lot of different assets and has a good income to be putting serious money in that. We'll definitely rewatch. Yeah, the only, like, investment videos I made that are, like, actual videos and not just lives are from back around then. And we can definitely watch, like, my investing videos. And I have no idea what I said, so I haven't pre-watched anything, so it should be interesting. But yeah. So let's see what else we have. 5 Pokemon investing predictions that will define 2026. So it looks like this guy may be choosing
Pokemon cards are
cards. Let's see what he has to
changing.
say.
And what was once considered a niche hobby a few years back has now grown into something global, and Pokemon cards are bringing people together from every corner of the world. Now, Pokemon cards are very powerful because they've turned childhood memories into something very...
And I guess I'll share, for anyone who's going to be watching this video later who maybe doesn't know me, my intention is certainly not to be disrespectful to any of these content creators. I think it's really cool that they're putting their views out there. I don't think I'm necessarily right about anything. And I guess my credentials, for those who don't know me, I own one of the biggest Pokemon collections in the world. It's probably top 20 now, top 15. And I run a number of different businesses in the space, and I am both investing and collecting. I'm one of the biggest investors and collectors in Pokemon in the world at this point. And I don't say that because I want to gloat or anything like that. I just say it because I'm not just talking from nowhere. I have a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of, like, passion in all of this stuff, and experience. So it's not just coming from no success and nowhere. I've managed to build, not just a few businesses, but a bunch of, but one of the largest collections, or for those investors out there, like, investment portfolios. And yet, I'm can still seem somewhat bearish, and yet I'm holding so much of this, right? So it doesn't mean that you can't buy the stuff, that you can't engage in it. And there are always ways to value invest and engage in any market. You don't have to just because something isn't a guarantee doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Real and tangible.
And I felt that way the entire time, that nothing I've ever done in Pokemon has been a guarantee, and that there was a chance of failure, all along. And I think largely I've gotten very lucky.
And something you can connect with, and they hold value. And that's why Pokemon is just so strong, especially in the collectible world. It just gives us a way to reconnect with our childhood in a very tangible and meaningful way. And it's kind of crazy because when I collected Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh as a kid, and I played all those games growing up, I never really thought how useful some of that information would be, because in the world today, with how popular collectibles are, it's actually become super useful info. I'm actually really grateful to my parents, honestly, because even though when they saw me playing Pokemon as a kid or collecting cards, they never really dismissed it as a waste of time, which is really cool to see, especially now that I'm thinking about it, because back then, people have definitely more open minds now about gaming and all that. But my parents were always like, they were really happy to see me so passionate about something. Saying that, Pokemon cards have just changed tremendously as well, because in the last year, Pokemon cards have completely shifted. And right now, the condition price gaps are pretty big, but I'm actually predicting that this will get to much bigger levels. So if you're wondering what condition price gaps are, it's essentially the price.
Right, so the first argument he's making, it sounds like, is he's making, and hopefully the sound is still good, is he's making an argument that the condition price gaps are actually going to get larger over time. That, a PSA 10 is going to be, I imagine he's going to say the gap between like a PSA 10 and a PSA 9, PSA 9, PSA 8 is going to increase over time. And that's an interesting prediction. Historically, we've seen that on very rare items during boom periods. But then we've also seen some of those very rare low pop items, like in the vintage world, then have the largest corrections after the boom periods and fall back closer to the nines. Now, does that historical price data mean it's going to repeat in the future? Absolutely not. As I say constantly, it's first of all, we have so little data to pull on. This hobby has only had a lot of money in it for 7 years, 8 years now. This amount, so much money that it warrants all this attention and kind of conversations. I think it's interesting. I think the counter argument, of course, is going to be like, well, the reason maybe it has done that with sort of cream of the crop items and items that, have a very low PSA 10 rate or very low ratio from 10 to 9 is your items like the Moonbryon, for example, which you showed here, that have a very high 10 ratio. How much is that really going to matter to collectors? Are people going to want the card more than the grade, right? Is the card the rare thing that you really want in your item? So the absolute rarity of the card, is that what matters? Or does the condition rarity, does the of the card matter? And I think my guess is that in modern and things like the Umbreon, it's more about having the card. It's more about having the piece of art. It's more about having the rarity, the absolute rarity, because that card is extremely hard to pull from a pack. I think that the condition rarity on something like that is far less attractive relative to items that have a much higher 10 to 9 ratio. Now, the counter argument would be, well, yes, of course, and that's why the Moonbryon is probably only double in a PSA 10 to a PSA 9. We're already seeing that kind of play itself out in the market in pricing today. And he's arguing that maybe that gap will increase. And I would say I'm just not sure, what we would base that off on. As a collector myself, and if you think an item is investable and you think the item itself is something that's going to stand the test of time and be more relevant to more people in the future, I would suggest you spend the most money you can on it and get the highest grade as possible, or buy multiple copies of it, or whatever. However you put more money into it, I think that will do well. I'm not sure that the 10s will outperform the 9. I imagine they'll most likely follow in kind of tandem, but it's interesting that he thinks so. So let's listen to a little bit of why maybe he's gonna make that point on some of these cards.
Price premiums for perfectly graded cards versus PSA 9s and so forth. Though honestly, I'm expecting this area to become even bigger, both for pristine cards and PSA 10s, because I do think that right now collectors are so hyper focused on condition. And honestly, I don't see this area slowing down. I mean, real talk, if I have to be really honest with you, and this is like, I'm going to just let you know personally, PSA 9s and PSA 10, if they were out of the slab, most of us would have a very difficult time seeing the differences. Sometimes you will notice that
So those feel like arguments against what he's saying to me. Those seem like arguments of like that there isn't much of a difference between PSA 10s and PSA 9s, so why should people pay for the PSA 10s? One, and then two, the prior argument, which is that people really care about grading right now. You know, one of the cardinal rules of investing, right, is value investing is look for value that other people don't, right? And so if people are really valuing PSA 10s right now, theoretically, they may be overvaluing it right now. And in a few years, they may not care about it as much. And maybe that's the time to then buy, right? You're always looking to buy things when things are less hot than you think they should. So rather than following kind of the current market sentiment, you're looking for things that are you know, have really good fundamentals, but aren't being talked about, aren't really hot, and thus are a lower price point than they probably should be. You know, i.e., as you know, as I've talked about, you know, some trophy cards today. There isn't the knowledge, there isn't the understanding of how rare, there isn't the understanding of the history. You know, there isn't the money available in some cases, and all of that, you know, has led to a relatively low price point on those compared to pretty much everything in the hobby. You're zigging when they zag, yeah. And again, you know, these are intelligent investor, you know. So this is exactly like the type of thing, right? I feel like the market for trophies are too niche, but should they be niche? Why would they be niche? I would say they're niche because there aren't that many copies and people don't talk about how great they are. But what's not niche? The Art Academy. When I talk to kids about what's the best Pokemon, you know, what's the most expensive Pokemon card, they know it's the Art Academy card. Why? Because that's not niche because of Logan Paul, because of advertising, because of storytelling, right? And so you give things enough time, like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, the fact that it doesn't have a narrative and the fact that it is niche makes it undervalued, because as soon as it's not niche, because it has, in my opinion, the fundamentals to not be niche. If people start talking about how cool they are, how rare they are, you know, like everyone on here is constantly talking about investing in modern, right? It's a 24-hour ad, you know, for jumping into these things, for believing in these things. And you have nobody, including myself, because I don't like to talk about, like, you know, what to do. You know, so what I would say is it's about looking at the item and it's saying, should this item be popular? Is it cool? Is it historically important? Does it have popular Pokemon? Could I see this item being more popular in the future than it is today? That's how I look at the demand side. And then the supply side is, how rare is this item, right? You know, so now I think that you should never buy or invest or collect things that you don't enjoy and you don't get. You should, however, not let other people's opinions or the prices dictate, particularly in the short to medium term. The reason I've been successful is I've done the opposite of what people have said, right? So the last few years, when everyone was talking negatively about vintage, I basically bought tons of gold stars, and I had many, many copies of gold stars going into like this boom, and I've been selling them this year, right? So it's you buy things that and other cards, right? And so what is historically significant now? We're trying to think about, and then what is going to be historically significant years from now? And that's very difficult to predict, which is also why these items are it is very speculative to be investing in trophy cards, to be investing in any of these things, because, you know, there can be a ton of volatility, and I am guessing, we are guessing on the potential demand, the potential interest. But I think understanding the concept, and to go back to this guy's point, like if everyone's into grading right now and it's super interesting to people, now might be a time to get out of grading, right? You want to get in grading as a business. Like I'm in the grading world. I'm selling lots of graded cards. I sell whatever people want. I don't tell people what they should want. And if I'm buying a collection and then I'm flipping it, I'm just buying what people want in the moment today. If I'm investing and collecting and holding things for a long time, and ideally never selling them or never needing to sell them, it's all about getting items at what feels like a very undervalued price, right? Because then you don't need to worry about when you're going to sell it, because very likely when you look at it again in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to be higher or has a better shot of being higher. Now, I think the asymmetric risk on a trophy card, for example, is way better because your upside is massive. There are cards selling today for 30,000 that could be selling for millions in the future because there's only 12 copies, because there's only 20 copies, and because people don't know about them. There's no interest in them. You never see them talked about. The collectors who actually own them are not big mouthed, right? And frankly, don't want to be big mouthed because they want to buy them themselves, right? I mean, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of reasons why I don't like to talk about what I'm doing, because I literally I don't want to bid against myself. I don't want to push things, and the vast majority of money, the vast majority of engagement, the vast majority of interest is still, in the areas also where people can, there is enough inventory for businesses to make money. So the reason why Modern is so pushed also by the Pokemon Company, by all the different companies in the space, is because that's how people make money. Not that many people can make money on the super rare stuff because there aren't that many copies to sell and to build businesses around, right? Whereas large companies like PSA, like the Pokemon Company, like eBay, like all the auction houses, right? They will thrive when Pokemon is popular, and when Pokemon is popular, very popular, you need lots of items for people. You need and so then it's just this cycle, right? The issue is that hopefully that will continue. The problem is it still continuing on Hidden Fates? Is it still continuing on? And of course, Hidden Fates has now finally come up after 4, 5, 6 years. But the best sets ever, right? Are they really going to be the best sets ever in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years? And really, I think you need to give it 15, 20 years. And it's if an item is not rare and an item doesn't have any intrinsic objective qualities that make it desirable, or that should make it desirable based on historical performance of comic books and coins and antiques and sports cards and whatever, I think you should, just as Don Draper says, zig when they zag, just stay the course, as Rudy would say, right? Stay the course, and don't overreact one way or another. When things are up, don't overreact to sell. When things are down, don't overreact to buy. Pokiani said today that things were getting harder to sell. I don't know how much of it was satire and how much was real. What's your take? Is the market cooling off? I haven't noticed the market cool off in my specific business. I think we're still setting close to records. I'm not sure. I do know that Pokiani, Brian, is sarcastic a lot, is my understanding. So yeah, I'm not sure, but we can definitely watch some of that. But yeah, go back to the video here. So I'm a little bit, so like, his argument, like I would now, if he believed that grading was going to become more popular, which I think you could make an argument that grading could be more popular in the future, and that 10s could become more popular in the future than they are now, more 10 collectors rather than less 10 collectors, and that PSA was going to continue to have a stranglehold on the market and grow their market share. Those would be arguments for why demand would increase, right? Because you shouldn't be talking about now, right? Before what you're trying to do is predict the future. Are things priced accurately? Is the future priced in accurately today or not? Where is the future going to be in 10 years, and has today priced in that future accurately? This is what a value investor is thinking. Those are the questions that you're asking yourself before you buy anything.
PSA 9 centering is definitely a little bit off, but honestly, I've got some PSA 9 cards that I cannot believe that they didn't come back as a PSA 10. Now, the differences between a PSA 10 and a black label are so minuscule. At this point, you're not really, and collectors are not really paying anymore for that bump up in quality as much as they're paying for that premium or that unique feel of having it in a black label or having that real pristine grade. And we're even seeing this now with cert numbers, like with
I think that's clearly right. You know, I think that I think people are paying to add it onto that. I think people are paying just for the look of the black label with the card, but it's the rarity, it's the attention. I think there's also a social media around it. There's a high price point. There's there's also lots of incentives. Like if Beckett black labels sell really high, Beckett gets a lot more business, and all these different people benefit from that. You got to be careful about this stuff. I think when you are paying very high amounts for mass-produced items and you're only paying that high amount because of condition rarity, I would be very, very careful. I think that's a huge risk you're taking. To me, there's no reason to take that risk. Like, way too volatile. There's so many good items that have not just condition rarity, but have actual rarity to the card themselves, regardless of condition absolute rarity. I would focus on absolute rarity right now. I think focusing on condition rarity is unnecessary in a market when there's plenty of opportunity to just avoid the risk.
With PSA 10s, if a card has a more recent cert number, it will get a bigger price increase from an older cert number. I get that if the PSA if it's an old PSA slab, the classic slab, I do understand that. But in terms of this recent cert stuff, it is crazy, right? I mean, the market has really taken a big shift. And these changes are happening across the board. And
all right, let's watch. I know I said let's go, I think it was top Pokemon investments, Pokenomics. Let's see what I used to say. Let's see if it comes up. I might have to go into my channel itself. You do hear it. I'm glad you hear it. Yeah. I think I used to title my videos top 5 and things like that to try and get clicks back in the day. Might just be too long ago. Here's top 5 keys to investing in Pokemon cards, but pretty long video though. And knowing me, it's going to be too it's not going to be specific enough. I really want to find one that was not a live, but a video. Let me remove this for a second and see if I can find one behind the scenes. Yeah, and let me know, guys, who you would like me to watch. I know I got a few suggestions before. We'll definitely watch those. Or if you want to send links or what videos, I can check them out privately and see if they'd be good. In the future, maybe I'll prepare some. Tonight, I just really want to hang out with people and try out the sound. Ooh. One second. Okay, let me see if I can find this. Gosh, it was so long ago. Yeah, it is a slab binder. I was taking some slabs out of that binder today, reorganizing a bit. Okay, I think this one will be good. Let's check this one out. This goofy young Jake in the thumbnail here. All right, so this was 5 years ago. So this would have been like we were in the boom and kind of the start of the boom. I think maybe like maybe it was like right around when it was happening to some degree. Let's see. Ooh. Okay. Share screen here. Okay, there we go. Young Jake. Before the thinning hairline and the weight gain of adulthood. All right. Let's see what I had to say. So this is called Top 5 Pokemon Card Categories to Invest in. Let's see what I had to say. Again, I have not watched this. Should be interesting. Hey guys, hope everyone is doing well today. So in this video, I want to give you guys my top 5 investing Pokemon categories. And these are categories of cards that I believe are actually investable within the Pokemon hobby. And what I mean by investable is that I see that they there's a likely chance or a good chance that these cards will go up in value over time, as long as the Pokemon hobby stays relevant and popular. Or at least the cards are very likely to retain their value or retain a significant portion of their value. Or I think that they have maybe quite a bit of upside for some of maybe the riskier cards or riskier categories I'm going to talk about within this video. And so I'm going to, hold up a few cards as we talk, just to give you examples of the different categories that I think are the most 2020 Jake. So the first category, I want to talk about. Obviously, I'm going to have done well because everything has gone up a ton. So no matter what I choose, I'll look correct, like anyone who ever made videos talking about buying things. With you guys is trophy cards. The first 2 categories I think are probably the most obvious ones. I would hope for most people who are interested in investing in Pokemon. So we've got, not anymore. They used to be, but not anymore, I would say. Your Tropical Wind, the most expensive trophy card I pulled out, your Art Academy cards. I consider, so interestingly, like that Art Academy card has 20 to 30x'd from when I bought it. And that Tropical Wind is probably only 2 to 3 times. Just interesting. Very, it shows that it's hard to predict how, it's like just because some things are in sort of a category of things, the narratives that are created around different items, the price point that they were back then, the narrative that's created back then versus the narrative that's created now. It's interesting to see kind of what items have absolutely skyrocketed and what items have just kind of gone up. What I consider a trophy, is anything that is. I think that Art Academy Pikachu, I bought. I think those were going for like $400 or $500 at the time of this video. Whether that's in an art competition or a playing, and that Tropical Wind I think was like maybe $7,000. And that card's probably like $30,000 now. Playing the game competition or a video game competition. You also have maybe lesser known trophy cards. If people have seen these, the Poke Creator cards. Here's a card. I think I bought that Wurmple, the full Poke Card Creator set, the PSA 10 set. We're buying them for, at this time, probably $100 each or something like that. And I assume those cards are really expensive now. Let's see like how well, you don't hear a lot about the Wurmple, the skyrocket on the Wurmple. But let's check. So if you had bought the Wurmple back then for about $100, which is what I paid, Poke Card Creator. Let's see what last sales on that card are. Last sale was $9,000. So that means it went from $100 to $9,000. So let's see. So a 90x, 90 times that Wurmple has gone up. No one's ever talked about that card, over the last 5 years. It's just a good example of like people don't really know. There's so many prices and there's so many items. People don't really know. Would you ever have predicted it would be Wurmple? And there are plenty of cards I can find and we can look through that have shot up in value. But sometimes it's the cards, it's the Pokemon, it's the items that are the least popular that are people don't know about. At this time, people didn't really know what these were, and they really weren't rare enough. I think these were had 5,000 or so printed of each, something like that. They really weren't rare enough to be in that upper echelon of trophy cards, and so they didn't really have huge price points. The Art Academy cards at the time, those had 100. They're extra copies of all these things, but there were about 100 printed. It's interesting to see. So if you had bought the Wurmple cards and the you would have 90x. If you had bought the Tropical Wind, you would have 3 to 4x, which would be a massive failure given how much other things have gone up. And the Art Academies have they've 500. They've probably 20x, 25, 30x. But Art Academy, and that's a Pikachu card. People know that card so much better than Wurmple. But that Art Academy card's probably more like 15K now, maybe. But anyway, from the WB competition when we were kids, a card that has a lot more copies than the Art Academy, much more copies, and so has quite a bit of a lower price point. But not a lot of those cards have really survived in high grade over the years, and they can be quite difficult to grade. And you do see those sealed packs coming up on eBay, but you don't see that many. So that's a card that's a little bit of knowledge at the time, right? I knew, because I had tried to grade some of these myself, they were very hard to grade. So I focused on the 10s because I thought the 10s, it would be very difficult in the future if people tried to open these to grade them out. That ended up really working for the Pikachu in particular, which was a particularly hard one to grade. But, just kind of applying, again, just guessing. I had no idea what the Pokemon market was going to do then. But trying to look at fundamentals of things, trying to make kind of smart decisions. And then the market has really carried me and made me successful. The broader market, which I've had nothing to do with, but making good decisions, and kind of understanding the intrinsic value over long periods of time, you're going to do better. Now I do think, which Wurmple are we talking about? We're talking about the PokeCard Creator one. Hopefully you can see it. The one I was showing in the video. That I consider a trophy card and a card that is still very affordable and yet is a trophy card. And so the reason I wanted to show you those different levels is that, and there are a lot of trophy cards too that are fairly affordable and you can buy in the hundreds. Not all of them are in the thousands or in the hundreds of thousands for your high-end Pikachu Illustrator and the original Pikachu trophy cards, those sorts of things. So just briefly. And I think that this is fairly common sense, but and a trophy card, for those who don't know, my definition is basically it's a card that was given by the Pokemon Company for some sort of award, some sort of event, and generally the trophy cards have some amount of rarity to them, relative rarity to them, and are because they're produced for a specific event or for a few specific events and given out to only the winners or the participants or whatever. And there's usually not such massive events that that now could there be a trophy card that was not relatively rare and that had hundreds of thousands of copies? Theoretically, there could, but that's kind of the general category. And similar to some promos, like Pokemon tends to not release a lot of those. What makes trophy cards so resistant, we could say, to potential retraces in the future, and why, when you look at other hobbies, what tends to be the most expensive cards or the most expensive comic books or the whatever it is, it tends to be the rarest item. And so the benefit of trophy cards is that we generally have a better sense of how many there actually are, which for any investor is a good thing to actually have that data instead of a guessing game about how much there are actually of this card in the world. So that's a good thing to have. There are extra copies of trophy cards,
I'm going to make,
but we hope not too many
Let's go to
extra
the
copies,
next.
and
Let's go
that
to the
seems like
next
less.
category here.
So I think people know these, but I pulled out a couple. We have our Charizards, our Shadowless and first edition Charizards.
Okay, so
unlimited.
vintage WotC.
Charizard's always good.
Sort of the next category.
I particularly when you're buying sort of the main Pokemon, the things to look for. So at the time in 2020, those cards, the Shadowless Charizard in a 9 was going for about $900, and and I have not prepared any of this beforehand. I happen to have a memory for numbers and prices and what I paid for things. So I didn't prep any of this, but so that Charizard PSA 9 Shadowless card. So that card today is going for about 10,000. So, if you knew basically nothing about the hobby and you just kind of came in for a week and you looked at, okay, what's the most historical, desirable card, in the hobby, almost everyone at that time, I assume still now would have told you that. Pokemon Classics. Yeah. This video was made like in 2020. So we were already like, yeah, we were back when the Shadowless was about 800-900, which at the time was, relatively quite expensive to what it was, years before that. So that's, 10x. So a 10x. And then that first edition, I think, what was that? A PSA 6, I think I showed in the video at the time. Not coming up right now for some reason, but I assume it's probably a similar percentage change. Oh, it looks like, what are they going for? Around 12 to 13. I want to say, I don't know if I can remember what I paid for the 6, but the 6, oh, I know. I bought an entire first edition Shadowless set, all the cards included, for I think 2,600. And I think I priced the Charizard. Usually the Charizard's like half the price of it. So maybe it was like 1,300. So yeah, so that's 10x. So it's like a very solid, reasonable 10x. Okay. I'd say in that category, buy, for those who don't know, buy the most popular Pokemon.
We can look at other cards from that
Blastoise, Venusaur, Alakazam, Gyarados, Mewtwo.
We look at B-Series.
Mew for Expedition.
So I bought a Crystal. I bought like my Crystal.
And then, in your second generation, the starters for that. I bought those back then, I remember, for 2,600, and those are now 150,000. 140,000, something like that. Let's say they're 140,000. So those have 50x'd basically. Crystal Charizard is 50x'd. It's interesting that the Crystal Charizard's 50x, but the base set Charizard has only 10x'd. I mean, it's considerable difference. Short-term difference, long-term difference, have demand. I think, the way that I would read that or say a guess would be that, well, at the time, the amount of people and popularity of the Charizard, there weren't that many people who even had money who even got to the Crystal Charizard. They sort of stopped at just the first edition and Shadowless Charizard, and so there weren't a lot of people buying the Crystal Charizard or the Gold Star Charizard or going further back. When you have a very small hobby, the money tends to all go into just the top of the top, and sometimes the top of the top is actually overpriced early on in a market that's building, which is really interesting, I think. Kind of the opposite of what you would think. Okay, but I think we get the point. There's some other ones I know that have 50x, 30x, 20x, but let's say most things have 10 to 30 to 40x, in that amount of time. I want to talk about with you guys is sealed product. Okay, so next category is investing in sealed product. Is an excellent investment. The reason it's such a good investment, sealed product is an excellent investment. No, I couldn't have said that. And is because you can do so much with it. You can break it down. You can sell the packs. People love just the box itself. They love the look of it. They love the wow factor of having that box on a shelf. And so it really can become your PSA 10, PSA 9 first edition Gen Mint cards, or it can become packs, or it can stay as that booster box, entity. And I think that even if the expected value of the box is really far under the box itself, that can make sense, and the box can still hold its value way over the PSA cards. And so even if there are more and more PSA cards coming out from that box, which there will be over time, and that may drop down the price if the demand doesn't get larger for those cards for Pokemon, the booster box numbers are always going down, right? Something very common that a lot of people say, and it's true. And so people who just want that sealed product or want the experience of opening that sealed product, might pay for that. The other huge thing about it is YouTubers. They're businesses, and YouTubers are making a lot of money on opening vintage sealed product, and they need. Yeah. So everything that I'm saying here has just become more true. Nothing that I would say is earth-shattering there. I certainly did not predict all of the streaming and the booster box opening and how crazy all of that market has gotten. And I do think much of it is way overpriced and overhyped now. But fundamentally, and particularly back then, I obviously saw it as potentially investable and did invest in sealed myself. Okay, next category, modern product. I think modern product, you shouldn't invest in modern product at all. Sealed product, I don't think it's investable. I think it's flippable, and I think that it is. I think if you buy it at like retail price, where right when it's out the gate, and you hold it and you flip it, you're gonna certainly in this climate, you're definitely gonna make money, at least for now. Things may change sometime in the future. But right now you would certainly make money. Every product seems to be going up, particularly the specialty products. Right after. And then in the long run, I think if you buy it at retail, it's possible. When Modern had started going up, so this probably would have been around, gosh, what sets would have been out, just to kind of ground myself in a time period. So Hidden Fates, I guess, had already been out for probably 6 months. Which for those who weren't here, like Hidden Fates was a massive deal. And as a lot of people were coming back during the boom, Hidden Fates and Evolutions eventually became sort of the sets that people love to open the most and were the most interested in. I forget when Sun and Moon ended. And when Sword and Shield began, because I think some of the early Sword and Shield sets were, I know they probably weren't out yet when I was making this video, though. Yeah, so, at the time, my mindset, 2023, No, I think Sun and Moon ended a lot longer. I think Sun and Moon probably ended around 2020. Something like that. I think they're getting old now. But either way. Oh, when did Sword and Shield start or end? I think Sword and Shield probably started around 2021, 2020, 2019, somewhere in there. All right, so this video would have been like at the start of Sword and Shield around then. So sets like I don't know if we were quite to like Vivid Voltage, which was a massive hit. I'm not sure if like you have to understand like what the headspace, you know, when you're watching these old videos would have been. But my feeling back then, obviously I'm commenting on like other YouTubers are talking about modern videos, you know, investing in modern sealed. And I think the hot things to invest in back then were evolutions and Hidden Fates, and if Vivid Voltage had come out, Vivid Voltage going into Shining Fates, and you know what I would say is that I have grossly underestimated the demand for the I did not, I grossly underestimated how much demand there would be in Pokemon and how much demand there would be specifically for modern, and opening, and the amount of opening product there would be. And although as a business, I thought you could buy booster boxes back then for, you know, $80 and sell them for $110 and make, you know, some profit, I did not view them as investable. I did not think, I didn't think that they were rare enough. I didn't think that they had good fundamentals. And I thought if they did become valuable, the earlier stuff would do better because it would mean that the market was so large and so huge. And so I'm curious to see if we look at Hidden Fates. So Hidden Fates ETBs at this time, they were going for around $50 each. Let's see how much they're going for now, because I know that set was out then. Let's see how much. So elite. So the hidden elite trainer boxes, I think they're what, around 500, right? A little over 525, something like that. So if we take 525 and we divide by 50, that's a 10 times. So if you were to have invested in Hidden Fates ETBs at the time, which was the gold standard, you would have 10 extra money. Same as those Shadowless and first edition Charizards. If you had invested that into, like, you know, one of those high flyer niche cards that have 30, 50, 90x'd, and there are lots of them, it would have way underperformed that. Let's see. Evolutions, I know, was $2,000. No, $1,000 a box then? Yeah, it was $1,000 a box then. So Evolutions is $2,400 a booster box now. So if you had bought that, you would have only 2.5 times your money. So that would have been a really bad, really, really bad investment. One of the worst investments you could have made. And I do know, for those who know the history of my channel, you know, Evolutions was one of those boxes that I really felt was not a good investment. Now, it's been a good investment because everything's been a great investment, right? You know, so you're trying to make these arguments and you're trying to say these things into this space of like where everything is booming and everything is going up, and it's very hard to make the arguments in a coherent way and also help people understand what is luck, what is skill, what are the real patterns underneath it all, and what's going to matter 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years from now. You know, Vivid Voltage is definitely one of those sets that's performed like the worst Pokepurist, as he says, because Vivid Voltage was really hot then and really hot out of the gate, and it went way up. And yeah, it would have been. So when I was making a lot of my videos, you know, those were the sets, and none of them have done great. Right now, if we look at Evolving Skies, which wasn't even around then, right? But if we look at Evolving Skies, a set everyone loves to talk about. I think. Oh, let's look at. Let's look at Team Up. That's a perfect one because Team Up is probably the best performing, or like one of the best performing sets of all modern time. If we count that as modern, and so that'll be like a favorable data point to kind of compare and to show like what some modern products have done, right? So that's at 11,000 roughly now, 10,000, 10 to 11,000, something like that. Now, what was it going for back then? That's the real question. Does anyone know? My guess would have been, so Burning Shadows, which was more popular at the time than Team Up. Funny to think back now, right? So, if you watch the top 5 investment videos, no one said any of the sets with any of the tag team sets because they weren't that popular when they came out, and people thought that Burning Shadows would be the most popular set or one of the most popular sets from that era because it had the Rainbow Rare Charizard, which was the big hit, other than Hidden Fates. It's just a lot of revisionist history, and people always being wrong. And then in hindsight, it's just people just remember, oh, I said it went up and it did go up, Anyway, so if we look at Team Up, my guess, because Burning Shadows, I think, was like $300 a box. I would have guessed Team Up, let's call it $300 a box, maybe. It was probably somewhere around there. You would have had a 33 times return. So now you're talking about the same return that you're seeing for, some E-Series cards, some Gold Stars, some Middle Era. Not quite as much as some of the really high flying ones, but definitely here's an example of a modern booster box that you could have bought a ton of back then, and you could have made that type of return. Although, if you had listened to the prevailing sentiments, you would have bought, Burning Shadows, Evolutions, Hidden Fates. Hidden Fates would have done pretty well, 10x, but let's see what Burning Shadows would have done. So Burning Shadows was 300 then. Now it's 1,200, right? So only a 4x. It's rough, just really rough. And again, a 4x is awesome in normal market, but it's insane in this. So, but listen, I never claimed, I've never claimed that that I could predict, what was going to happen, and I still don't, which is why I don't like calling any of this stuff investments. It makes me really uncomfortable. It's very unpredictable, and I think trying to do common sense things over long periods of time is your best way to make less mistakes and develop and hold and own a lot of items across a wide variety of items across the hobby that overall do relatively well, relative to going with the hype, going with what other people are saying. Are any one of your value assessments going to be the one that kills it for you? I don't think it's possible that I could have just bought 300 of that Wurmple card. I would have had to have been a psychic, because why that, okay, I thought it was cool. I think I owned, at one point, I think I owned 3 full PSA 10 sets, and now I only have my 1 left. And I've sold them way before they went up, way in value. I just have the ones I have left. Now could I have bought 1,000 Hidden Fates? Yeah, because 1,000 Hidden Fates, everyone was talking about how great it was, and it was a more obvious play. And some people did, which is part of what worries me about those plays and sort of the asymmetric risk, the amount of supply, the ability to have done that, the amount of people that know about it, the fact that all that's already priced in, and for something like Evolutions, I think it's really hurt it because sentiments have changed. It's not cool anymore. People aren't really that interested in it, or aren't nearly as interested in it. Hidden Fates has done okay, has done decent. Team Up has done awesome. Burning Shadows has done badly, relative. I mean, it's sort of, but 2020 hindsight is easy. It's easy to see, okay, it was this, it was that, it was this. Don't listen to people who are just pointing to one data point and saying this describes everything, because there is no, the fundamentals over a long period of time, I think, will describe the general market. But there's always going to be items that go against the grain. There's always going to be items that don't seem historically important, that aren't that rare, that are, that just have such a narrative created around them, or they have such cool art, or they have so much energy around them that they defy the laws of those things. That doesn't mean that you should be investing in any of that, though, because for every item that does succeed, there's many that won't. And if that item succeeds, it's very likely that the other items will succeed. Everything that I talked about investing or speculating on in this video has exploded in value, right? And it's just don't get caught up. Don't get caught up with, anything beyond, Benjamin Graham's Intelligent Investor. It's really all you need. And it might feel boring and repetitive, and then it's just about doing your work, learning about the cards, trying to get as much information and knowledge and price data to make those decisions, to know why should I buy this card versus that card. And I get that it's like super deep divey, and that most people, are looking for talk about the 5 sets I already know and tell me that I did a good job buying them, right? Okay, we can listen to a little more. The counter argument to that would be that the demand we're seeing in Pokemon right now is very small, only going to make money, at least for now. Things may change sometime in the future, but right now you will certainly make money. Every product seems to be going up, particularly the specialty products. And then in the long run, I think if you buy it at retail, it is possible you'll make money. I'm not saying that I don't think you will. But I don't see, I think the value in a lot of this modern product is going to be for the fun of opening it up. And I just think that there's so much of it being printed. And it just reminds me a lot of like other hobbies when like things were just printed into the ground. There were tons and tons of reprints, and the product never got more valuable. Or, in 30, 40 years, it got like a tiny bit more valuable just because there was so much of it. So at least in this time frame, that has not happened to any items. All of the items from this era, even the worst performing, like a Vivid Voltage, are still up or still retain some value. Now, of course, the overall Pokemon market is so huge that I wouldn't view that as like the category is good to invest in. I would just say that it's a product of the overall market, right? The counter argument to that would be that the demand we're seeing in Pokemon right now is very small compared to the demand we're going to see in a year, in 6 months to a year. And so the amount of Pokemon product being printed right now is actually a lot less than the amount of Pokemon product they're going to be printing in 6 months to a year. Okay, so that ended up being what ended up happening, and the amount of demand grew so much that back then what we were seeing was nothing. And and could that happen again now? Absolutely. If that is the case, then probably buying modern product right now is could be a good investment, because maybe these boxes are very underprinted compared to what the demand is going to be in the future. But that's very risky. That's a lot of what ifs for me, and I think that those are big question marks, and that's why I don't particularly view it investable. I think it's more of a gamble. It's sort of a bigger gamble in my opinion. But when we talk about the negatives of sort of the Wizards of the Coast, the E series, the original Nintendo EX era boxes. Ooh, I think I may have gone off. Can you guys still hear me? The cards inside. And I think that if we see and I also think that they've become quite speculated on, because I think there are a lot of people limited edition. We get the sort of point, modern product. I feel like I've been saying the exact same thing forever. little bit of a broken record, part of why I probably left YouTube in the past. Okay, specialty modern is the last category of things that I would
Next, talk about next
invest in.
category. The fourth category I labeled as sort of like specialty modern product, limited edition specialty modern product that comes out. That's really just been coming out of Japan.
Now in English,
And
they have
I think that
ETCs,
these
they have-
cards
have,
are interesting. The
Pokemon
next
Center ETBs, things like that. But back then they didn't have any of that.
two categories we're going to talk about are sort of like less sort of established. I think like riskier. I don't think they're I'm not quite as comfortable like calling these like investments, but I do think that I do see some long-term potential upside. Some examples of a card, of one of those is like, these cosplay Pikachu cards. I have some, this other cosplay Pikachu, the chart with Charizard on it, Rayquaza, and Pikachu on that first one. And I have some other, I don't think they're quite as of those cards actually at
So that
PSA right
card-
now, and some of the Scream promos at PSA. And, those are examples too.
So the Scream promos and the full art, the Poncho Pikas. So that Poncho Pika, I think they were going for about $100 in PSA 10 to like $150. Maybe by this time they were up to 200. And similar for those others. And now what are they? $5,000. So similarly, these have gone up 25 to 50 times in value. So among the biggest winners, but enough of me. Let's go listen to somebody else. I don't know what else I have here. Undervalued cards. I don't know. Up and newcomers. Talking, let's say, Versus Series, Prism. I don't know. I think I was talking about like level X's and middle era, that they might be investable, but they may not be investable. Those types of things. Okay. All right. Let's look up. See what else people might want to watch. Let's look up Rudy. Someone suggested we watch a Rudy video. Do you have a specific Rudy video in mind? Let's see what he said. Or PSA grade unless you're rich. Let's see what he says. 8 days ago, he has a video entitled "World's Largest 17 million in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet." Let's see what he has to say about that era.
Back. My name is Rudy. You're watching Alpha Investments. Today, we have a very special video, ladies and gentlemen, around the world. Pluto is still a planet. Your mom is still sweet. She makes me breakfast every day, especially this morning. I promised her I would do this video reveal. Today, we reveal the world's largest known supply of Pokemon sealed Scarlet and Violet product left and known to exist. You're going to see today the first ever of this location being revealed. And today we're going to discuss the Timmy mentality, the herd mentality, what's happening in the world, and, well, why people tend to not do well, why people kind of follow the wrong thing, and why the average person always loses and is wrong. So as we prepare today to have a good, long conversation, today we're going to discuss the mindset, what's going on, and we reveal
It's a big
The
room.
largest Scarlet Violet position. As I promised, I would reveal to you all. The conversation today is going to be up here. Please do not look down here. That's inappropriate. If I have to come down to your level, I'm here. Today is a very special day. Vlad, we need the chair. Today, we are going to discuss the mindset of investing and collecting on a whole different level. The focus and years it took to do this. Vlad, rich guy chair, closer. We're going to discuss the long journey it took to build today's positions.
What
to
is
get us.
going on?
Thank you, Princess. We're going to discuss the mindset it takes, the tremendous amount of capital, just the difficulties, the ability to do things when they don't feel good, and the ability to stay the course and buy the things. In order to do this stuff, you have to really be buying when you don't want to. When you're uncomfortable, you have to make the decisions and do the things that you don't want to. Because right now, with Magic and Pokemon, whatever the hottest thing is, it's a crowded trade. Everybody goes for it. Everybody wants the same thing. Nobody focuses on everything else. Today, as we look at Scarlet and Violet, it's been a little while. It's been a little while, everybody.
So he's basically making a value investment argument. A very similar argument that I make, right? And I totally agree with him that when you look at something and oftentimes you're the only one, or you're looking at an item or an era or whatever, and people are saying it's not good, or it can't go up, or whatever, and because of that, you're able to amass a huge position in it, and you're able to buy it at a price that you feel is undervalued because you think that there is upside. And Rudy is making the case here. I imagine he's setting up the case that he did that with Scarlet and Violet. I do remember that Rudy was making videos, and I believe I was too on my channel at the time, about this was during the early part of Scarlet and Violet. Sorry, not the super early part, but like when Battle Styles came out, the sort of the what are they called? The alternate arts, the alt arts came out. It was a very there was a big dip in Pokemon at the relative to where Pokemon had been for the past couple of years, and those boxes were, I think I was sourcing Battle Styles at $65 a box, and Evolving Skies was definitely more. It was like maybe got down to like $90 a box at its very lowest, and then Chilling Reign was around $70 a box, and you could buy, I bought, for me, a lot. I don't buy that much sealed. So for me, I think I bought maybe 10 cases, roughly of each set, which I sold a long time ago. I sold probably, now 2 years ago, maybe, over time. I still have one of everything. I always keep one of everything, as a collector and as a hedge against my own stupidity. My own mistakes, but and it just feels good. I guess the completionist in me likes to have one of everything. Rudy here, on the other hand, has not sold, he's sold a lot, but he's probably also bought a lot more and is still holding a ton of it. And I'm sure he bought a lot back then. I'm sure he's continued to buy. I'm sure he buys now. I'm sure he's constantly buying. He'll probably talk more about it, but I would imagine his business functions that he's constantly buying and selling all the time and trying to make a margin, but he's making enough margin, and he's doing it at enough volume that he's also able to then take that money and just put things back, take a lot of that profit and just put it back in inventory. So probably a lot or most or all of Alpha Investments profits over the last 10 years, which have been a lot just in his business, the active reselling, one item, that he buys for one price and selling it at a higher price, and his Patreon and all these things. Probably the vast majority of that money has gone back into cardboard and allowed him to invest and build all this stuff. And, rather than buying lots of expensive cars or, houses or this or that. But let's hear from the man himself. He's, my counter argument, of course, will be that you could have put all that money you put into these into things that were rarer, scarcer, nicher, and done better. And I think that they're going to do better over the next 20 years. And they're easier to sell and they take less space and all these things. And that would have been right up to this point. So now 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we don't know. But, there's always the other side of it, which is that if you had put millions and millions of dollars into anything Pokemon, you have made many millions of dollars, no matter what it was. So just, understand that when you're watching something like this.
And how on earth is everybody so excited about spending all their money on ME1, ME2, ME2.5, Ascended Barney, $200 ETBs, ME3, ME2, which everybody said was Charizard.
So this I agree with. I mean, I think the new sets are surprisingly valued relative to some of these older sets. But my conclusion is not that these older sets are undervalued, personally. It's that people want to rip and open and they want the newest and the most shiny. And we'll see if that demand continues. But, it is an interesting time. And we've seen this in the past with Hidden Fates and, when that demand with Vivid Voltage, a great example, we haven't seen it massively, but something I talked a lot about on my channel, that just because something is older does not mean it's more relevant to people. In fact, age can make it less relevant.
Or bust. Nobody wanted it. And everybody said you shouldn't buy ME2. It's only got one good card, and there's nothing else good in the product. And that's, and now we have ME2 $500 booster boxes, everybody. Why? What's the point? What's the point of doing that? You have to have, why are you buying a brand new item that's going to have a longer print cycle when there are so many previous items available that are under $500 a box? And I know it's easy to go online, hey, Rudy, I went to my local OnlyFans, I went to my local Feet Finder, I went to my local Walmart. I can't find ME4, and I'm sure it's because you have it all. And you're probably right. But it's not my fault. If your stepsister contacts me whenever there's a restock and a drop, and I don't have to use a Scalper Scanner 6000, am I supposed to be upset? She's sweet. She makes good breakfast in the morning. It's been a long night. And people have to have an enemy. You got to have a bad guy. You got to be upset over something. You got to blame somebody. You got to point the finger at somebody. Something has to be the reason things are the way they are. Even though 90% of the product you see that's been sitting here and rotting is because it was unsellable product. Not because it was a great investment, not because, I had to go around the country and wipe out all of the Walmarts. I had to make sure that all the GameStops. No. You can't do the same thing everybody else is doing. You can't focus in life on the thing that everybody is focusing on.
So the irony, right, is that he's right relative to some degree, but he has been buying things that are relatively low-hanging fruit compared to people who are very deep into Pokemon. So it's I agree with everything he's saying. His just conclusion, I think, was wrong. And it is a little ironic because he did this before with the Rudy bathtub and couldn't move any of it and got really frustrated. So, it's Rudy is funny, and I love his Magic videos, and I love when he goes and those old videos when he would just buy Magic collections and go through the binders and talk about his love for the cards, and I love the hoarding and the sort of evil money, all that stuff I think is funny, and I think he has a real passion for this, and I think he loves to hoard, and he loves to hoard cardboard, and he loves the feeling of like owning things and amassing things and building an empire. And it's like, I totally get it. I think it's fun. This is not food and water. I don't think it's like bad, like awful that he's hoarding these things or building these things up, right? But his takes on Pokemon, his takes are always, when things are booming, they're going to boom harder. When things are bad, and the thing that I own should be booming harder, which is sort of his take in this video, right? It's like, I made all this money on Scarlet and Violet, but the boxes aren't high enough. They should be even higher because the brand new boxes are selling for so high. And then when things go bad, he'll say, now's the time to buy. Even though I guess now is also the time to buy. So it's basically always the time to buy, it doesn't really work as a coherent strategy. What works as a coherent strategy is make a lot of money in your business and then sort of put it into the low-hanging fruit of a franchise like Pokemon that has exploded in value. And so Pokemon, Rudy, in my opinion, has rightfully chosen to put millions, as I have. Like, I have millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars into Pokemon. Right? Put millions or own millions, however it works, have millions move through these hobbies. And anyone who has done that has made a lot of money, no matter what they've chosen and what they've done, because the hobby has exploded so much. So those who have done that were just right about the hobby continuing to explode and going up. Just be careful about that they were right about, they were so smart to buy that specific thing or this thing or this niche thing or so that would be my takeaway from videos like this. It's not really broken up into like specific parts, but I don't know if you guys want to keep listening to it. I know there aren't that many people watching right now. But if you guys want me to keep going, I also could end the stream for tonight. What are you guys feeling? Are you guys enjoying this type of content? Kind of responding to things and talking about it this way. I enjoy watching videos and thought it would be fun and interesting, but definitely will be better if there's sort of engagement from the chat and happy to wind down the stream soon. You guys let me know. We can do a couple more though here. Have you watched any TCG Autopsy? I'm not familiar. Making bold claims about Tag. I don't know too much about Tag, so I'm not sure watching that would be. There's a video called Pokemon Culture, and Rudy rages about Pokemon for an hour. Wow, he's been talking about Pokemon a lot. I appreciate that, Implode. I definitely could like be much better organized and have like videos picked out. It's so much easier just to come on and just like hang out with people and have people suggest things. And I think it would be really good content and entertaining and interesting. And I have a lot of opinions, and again, nothing I'm saying is necessarily right, and just my opinion. If anyone out there wants to clip anything or disagree, I'm fine with that. I just would prefer it's done with full context. Like, hopefully I'm not taking any of these people out of context. And I don't know. Let's go back to just kind of, we can do another 25 minutes or so. I mean, even just kind of looking through it, I guess, gives us an idea of like when you type in Pokemon investing, it's all modern, ultra modern. Today. you know, and all this stuff acts as a advertisement for all of it, right? It's an advertisement. It's people sort of reaffirming each other's opinions, and when that happens, it's just human nature that things get overinflated. That in and of itself, and it has nothing to do with the underlying asset. The underlying asset could be great, but just when things do well, they then overinflate. You know, it's the same type of thing, same thumbnails. Buying these cards. Let's see how long we go. Ooh, he has a one of these guys. Max Mofo. Why vintage cards are cheaper than modern? That could be interesting. It's from like a year ago, though. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't see a single video on anything sort of niche, or is that true, or is that just my feed? This is interesting. How to best invest.
Also looks a lot better.
Let's see.
Shout out to Indonesia and the Malay viewers that also flew in to say hi. I really appreciate, chatting with you guys. This video is partly inspired by my friend who recently got into the hobby after checking out my store, and then he said, "Hey Ken, I really want to take Pokemon more seriously, and I actually have some physical reference that I brought out in all around me right now. So this is going to be quite a lengthy video because I also miss you guys a lot on YouTube, and I want to give you guys your money's worth, even though it's free content. But I want to give you the money's worth of being back in my Poke Cave. I know you guys I've been missing in action. I apologize, but this video is going to be about buying stuff in Hong Kong or in the home region. And my friend said, "Hey Ken, I have $10,000 Hong Kong dollars, and I want to take Pokemon more seriously. What should I buy?" So right now we have 10,000 right here, which translates roughly into $1,250 US, and then I'm gonna go through everything that I suggest you guys to buy, all the way to a $10,000 budget. Yeah. So if you guys have more money, so if you guys have like maybe 20,000, what do you guys want when you have 20,000? If you guys have 30,000, what do you guys want to buy when you have 30,000, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So this video is going to be about putting money where my mouth is, and I'm actually going to be doing all these purchases afterwards because my friend, shout out to Anthony, he is asking me, "Hey Ken, I have
so he's gonna
$150 US. What do you buy in Pokemon? As a new hobbyist, right?" So first of all, I would say again, there's so many things you can buy in the hobby. This list is not exhaustive or definitive by any means. It is just something that I will do in a conservative manner to ensure that you don't lose too much of your money, because that's not the idea of Pokemon investing. We want to see our pot grow over time. And also, I don't scout, new products. I don't go to Costco to, line up at 4 a.m. to buy some like Costco bundle. That's not what we're doing here. That's like, less time is money. Let's not do that. My investing strategy is just sit and hold on to them, right? So the number one option that I will recommend is you buy one slab that you like. and then also buy one Sword and Shield booster box. So that is my tip number one. And what I have on hand right now are the Sword and Shield era. So if you guys really enjoy the Sword and Shield, the Giratina or the Blaziken, these are two pretty good entry points for Pokemon investing. Just buy and sit on them. I think lately, Lost Origin, maybe it dipped a little bit to $600 or $650. Chilling Reign, maybe in the $500 range. Thereabouts, yeah. So the figures to me is not very, very important because I know it will just keep on going up.
And I know I'm just repeating this into the void, but with a few other people here, but it's like he's basing this off of the money that he's already made. He doesn't know that they're going to keep going up. He doesn't know what's going to happen, and it becomes this continuous self-fulfilling prophecy that people, and to your point, like this is completely feels like it's completely normal. Like I'm the weird one, which is so interesting. That I'm the not normal one. To me, it's these price points are just arbitrary. Why is $500 or $600 cheap? Why is that expensive? Based on what? How are you assessing that? But it's an advertisement for the products, and he's been right before, so he'll be right again.
These boxes are out of print. They're not going down. These were made in 2022 and 2023. Yeah, these boxes are from the Sword and Shield era, and then they're discontinued. And then they're selling pretty well at the store right now, actually. Like today we moved one of these boxes, and it's a Fusion Strike. Yeah, and then after I sold my box at around $750, I subsequently went onto eBay to check, what is the price of a box of Fusion Strike now. And then they're asking like $900 to $950. So this box very likely will be the second box in the Sword and Shield era to break 1,000. The first obviously being, Evolving Skies, and then the row of Evolving Skies over there. So I'm a firm believer of sealed products. So I recommend, just buy one slab that you really like and one booster box to start your stockpile of Pokemon products.
And I think it's fine to be a believer in something, right? And to put your money where your mouth is. And I hope that they keep going up, because if all these items keep going up, it's good for everyone. It's good whether you own the item or you own it, or you own the sealed, or you own vintage, or you own whatever, or you just care about the hobby and you want people to enjoy this stuff and like being here, right? Like, it's although I suppose the one negative of the price going up is it makes it harder to collect, but then there's other stuff to collect and newer stuff to collect. And I don't know, my take has always been with that is like, if you can't afford it, it's not food and water. Don't worry about it. Enjoy what you can afford. And part of the fun of trying to buy expensive things is that they're hard to buy. If they were easy to buy, it wouldn't even be that fun. So, none of this stuff is that serious. Collecting's not that serious. Is always my take on that stuff. But like, as far as like trying to make money or giving people investment advice of like, hey, you're a young person who doesn't have that much money, put it in these items, it's very bold, and it's it's gambling for sure. But all the Bitcoin, there's a ton of this stuff online, that's similar guarantees, similar things. And I always wonder, what do people think about, like, it's like the most successful investors, the most successful people, are slow burn, humble value investors. And it's like we've gotten to a point in our society where a lot of people think that the best investors are people who guarantee things and people who make very bold claims. And I don't know, I hopefully a lot of it is entertainment. And again, I hope all these items go up. I own the items he's talking about directly. And I have a lot of my businesses are invested in these things. And yet it still makes me uncomfortable. The advertising, the type of advertising, the type of pushing. And I always think it's interesting, like mystery boxes and streamers are getting hate, but telling people that modern is guaranteed to always go up or investing is always guaranteed to go up, that isn't bad for people. That isn't far more dangerous for addicts. You know, I don't know, people's ethics and sense of morality. You know, obviously it's all subjective and we're all entitled to our subjective opinions, but you know, it's you know, let's see what slab, I guess, what slab he chooses. Now, what I would say is, like, he picked these boxes, right? Are there boxes that I think would be worse to pick? Probably, but I wouldn't even know where to start with these products. Like, to me, it's like it's literally like it's just pure crapshoot gambling. It's like if I were to invest in this stuff, I would just invest in some of each and just be like, let's see, let's roll the dice, you know. You know, some of each box from that era, some of this whole era seems undervalued, you know. And then how much of it will it go up just because of everyone saying that to each other? And then, you know, that can only sustain so long. And then we see what happens is that it loses its push. I mean, why aren't people saying that about Evolutions? I mean, Evolutions is the most undervalued set ever based on the hype and intensity and how much it's gone up over the last 5 to 6 years. And the fact that it was, and that, you know, people are saying, well, Celebrations, you know, great, you know, blah, blah, blah. Celebrations has appreciated so much more than Evolutions has in way shorter, you know, of a time. You know, it's interesting. It's interesting. All right.
If there is an other investor in Hong Kong that holds more Evolving Skies than me, but what do I know? You know, Hong Kong is a whale. You know, so many Moby Dicks out there that like it makes my collection, you know, pales in comparison to what they have. Going to Pokemon Center and snatching these up, and then they have a stockpile in Stream 1 or something. You know, like
putting his money where his mouth is. He has a lot of money in this, you know, which makes me think, you know, and again, nothing against this guy like at all, but like, who are these? Like, he looks pretty young to me, like 26-year-olds. Maybe he's older, maybe he's 30. You know, I don't know. Where do they get their money from? Where, like, the guys who are giving you this advice, again, I have no idea about this specific guy, but did they get their money from, you know, their parents? And so they have super wealthy parents, and so they can afford to risk it. Because if that's true, like, I have nothing against the person, and I feel way better about what they're doing because they're having fun, and I don't think there's anything wrong with they're doing. But then coming online and giving investment advice to people who don't have huge amounts of money and trust funds, and you know, it's why giving financial advice out into the void, you know, is dangerous. It's why you know, financial advisors give investing advice individually based on your individual financial situation. You know, so
that's the cool thing about having a store now is you get to meet a lot of people. I think overall a very, very well done era for Pokemon. When you look at the English sets, let me talk a little bit about that, because nowadays I think there's almost too much holographic cards and too many full arts. You know, like you can look at like Black Bolt and White Flare. Look at the latest Mega Evolution and Phantasmal Flame and the M3 Japanese set. All those sets are, you know, illustration.
Yeah, you know, I think like these are subjective arguments. Like, is it good to have a lot or a little, or too much or too little? And they can really shift. Like, in one era, it can be like, we really like alt arts and we like a lot of them. And then the next era can be like, we like old school, like vintage feeling art, like hand drawn, like, and you know, the same thing has happened in comic books and you know, other hobbies that have existed a longer time. Like, sentiments and subjective opinions shift and change. You know, so I would be careful with being like too persuaded by any you know, person's take on what, you know, what's good, what's better about things like that. You know, I think you should have your own take on that, but you know, if you're going to be investing or speculating on that stuff, and there's nothing wrong with it, but just don't buy, you know, don't buy your own take so much, because subjectively, we don't really know. He doesn't know. I don't know. You know, I certainly don't know anything. I don't know anything. I don't know the answer to anything he's saying, right? It's not like I'm disagreeing with him and saying he's wrong. I just don't know. Yeah. So it's, to me, the reason to invest in Sword and Shield era boxes would be, hey, they're relatively cheap to Ascended Heroes, to Destined Rivals, to these newer sets. They're older. They were printed less, maybe not. We don't know. But a ton were open, so maybe there's less of them now in existence. Maybe not. Maybe there's a lot more. We don't know. And a ton of people got back in the hobby then, and they fell in love with those sets, and they're going to have amazing memories, and those sets are going to be relevant to many generations. You know, all stuff that may or may not be true. But you know, I think the gambling, has worked massively. You know, and depending on when he bought this and how, I don't know how these guys often purchase this stuff. To go back to it, like, how do you purchase all of this? Like, for me, I have to sell to buy, and I've had to, you know, build businesses in the space and do things to be able to afford and continue to maneuver as prices have gone up. And then you have guys who have, you know, in their 20s, who have multi-million-dollar positions and things. And, you know, I wonder, do they have a business in it? Or are they flipping? Are they reselling actively? And that's how they're kind of, you know, and is that their perspective, or are they getting their money from elsewhere? And if they're getting it from elsewhere, then again, nothing against them. It's great. I wish everyone was in that position, but they're probably just going to have a very different risk tolerance than you should out there, who that $10,000, that $5,000 is like very important money to you. Who should be investing?
Let's looks a lot better, yeah. So that's my take on the different era. Moving on, okay. Now we're gonna jump to a $10,000 budget, and I know that actually is a lot of money for a lot of people to be spending on cardboards. Yeah. So should I be talking about that at this point? I will get to it, but then maybe before I jump into the $80,000 recommendation, and if you guys are enjoying the content so far, you guys want to see more, please comment, like, and subscribe. But we collectors are very fortunate, because we have, you know, a lot of slabs, you know, in my collection. So I feel really fortunate to be in my position, and I also want to quickly, you know, stop with, you know, so much talking about money. As first of all, I started with a single box of Lost Origin. I ripped the Giratina in my 8th pack, and at that time I didn't even know what I had. And I almost, it's because, like, of course you need to have capital to do anything. You need capital to run a business. You need capital to start a collection. I don't care what kind of collection you want to collect, but hopefully it's Pokemon. I know some people, they're selling their Pokemon collection to buy One Piece right now. They're migrating to One Piece, which in my opinion, it's a pretty bad idea, because in my inner circles of collectors, we all think that right now the One Piece is kind of in a bubble, and whereas Pokemon is self-correcting. You know, these prices cannot be at, you know, almost $3,000 of a correction. So then now they fall back to $1,500 to $1,700, and it's okay for me because I know Pokemon, but I know absolutely nothing about One Piece. So that's why you will never see me like start talking about, oh, let's jump into One Piece, because I don't know it.
I mean, I think that piece is good advice, that the specific piece about, like, know and understand and have experience in the market that you're going to speculate on or gamble in. I think there might be some overconfidence here on sort of the Pokemon side, but I think it is good. It's definitely good advice to don't just follow the money and the hype if you don't have the knowledge. And when you jump into hobbies that have less price history, that have less it's even more unclear sort of who the demand is, how sustainable is the demand. There's even more risk. You know, I think he's right about all of that. I think that I do agree that Pokemon can recover from, smaller to moderate collections better than a newer TCG, likely because the people who make up the Pokemon market are a little bit more, have been through some of those down periods, and also it's more sticky. Pokemon's a bit the collector base is larger, the events, the businesses are much larger, there's a lot more touch points, there's a lot more here, and all of that stuff will be a backstop to some extent in kind of a downturn. Whereas I don't know how much of that exists for One Piece, and it could very quickly be. I know One Piece as an IP is incredibly successful and massive, but as far as the actual cards, I'm just not sure. That I think it's very early, which also can propose some asymmetric risk to the good side, right? If you think that, well, people don't really understand how popular it's going to be. But again, if you're going to make that case and you're going to believe that, you really should have some reasons why, some evidence, something to base that on. For me, it was how much we all loved these things as kids, Pokemon specifically, and the nostalgia effect. And then when I saw my cards again as an adult, how the emotional impact that it had on me, and the memories and the feelings that it brought, and bringing me back to my childhood. And that doesn't exist in One Piece yet, right? Because these cards are coming out for the first time, and people are more chasing value, hype, pretty, rare, rather than engaging it, from sort of a child's perspective, without all those other forces.
Kind of like tease you guys already. So you need to buy, the really, really liquid, and
I guess
some of them are saying like, when my son or daughter is older now, I'm gonna go to your store and buy stuff from you, and please teach me how to invest in Pokemon, and tell them, instill some knowledge into them to buy the right product so that it grows as an investment. Yeah. So the mindset has changed completely, 180 degrees. Yeah. And also there were some haters that will always post in the comment section. Yeah. But then actually that's good, because it gives me fuel to work even harder and outwork. I challenge myself to outwork myself to my limit, so that I can prove the haters wrong. Yeah. So there's that's also really meaningful message I want to send is, don't let
you would consider
don't let people around you telling you
as a hater,
like you cannot do something, and why are you dropping so much money into this? Like, of course, everything in moderation, right? Don't go too crazy. I always tell you to don't leverage in Pokemon. Do not buy on margin, but buy a little bit, accumulate the zero products a little bit. Even if you cannot buy like a booster box, which can be very, very expensive for a lot of people at this point. I know Pokemon is very, very expensive. I'm also stunned when people are dropping, thousands into Pokemon products. Yeah, because they like it, right? It makes them happy. It brings them joy. But too much of something is going to be harmful to your life. Yeah. So along the same line, if you cannot drop that much money into a booster box, and you're going to be typing a comment saying this guy is complete and utter bullshit, you're teaching the wrong stuff to people. Like, I'm not even teaching, it's just an open discussion. But what I'm saying is, if you cannot buy a booster box, you can always buy ETBs. You can buy Build and Battle Stadium. You can buy the pre-release box, those smaller ones, and even a single pack. That was a very, very long tangent. If you guys still with me,
yeah, so I think anything that can preach some level of kind of caution, be careful, be thoughtful with your money, understand what you're doing, do research, hear from different viewpoints, understand other hobbies, get as much historical data as possible. All very good advice. And, I think he seems like a good dude who loves Pokemon. And I mean, all of the guys, that I've commented on, I'm sure are very likely very good people who enjoy and love Pokemon. And I think there's this. It seems to just be the sort of moment that we're in that there's this type of confidence that of course I just can never and have never been able to get my head around. And I think that he makes a point of like the haters fueling him to do better and work harder, and I think being concerned that his investment strategies are too bullish and he's pushing that out there, and people are going to sort of follow in his footsteps, and it's almost like I think people having a negative response to that or a concern response to that is a helpful kind of push and pull to the conversation. Anyone who's going after his character or anyone's character or questioning people's motives, like they're doing it just for themselves, just to make money, not because they care about who's watching, like any of that stuff, I think is unless those are pretty hard things to prove and pretty off the table. So I think it's about 11 o'clock now. I think I'll probably wrap up there. I do appreciate those who hung with me, tried something a little bit different tonight. There's a ton more content out there. If people in the comment section can leave suggestions for what to watch in the future, to what to watch on the next one, that'll make this like interesting and entertaining, and things that you want me to respond to, we would be happy to. Content creators you want me to respond to their videos. But yeah, appreciate everyone hanging out. Hi, Chimera. Sorry. And I will talk to many of you guys in the next one. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.